Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show. And tonight we're going to be doing our very first live roster review. And we're going to be reviewing Blake's team from the Crash and Smash Dynasty 12 team Superflex IDP league that we just completed about a month ago. We're not going to be getting into what he could have or should have done in the startup. What we're going to be doing tonight is taking a look at his roster and seeing some actionable things that he could actually do to improve his dynasty team. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. We're going to grab his team here from Dynasty Daddy, free site that I like to use, and grab some powerful information from Dynasty Daddy. Now, as we see here, we have the Dan Flashes owned by Blake. And if you take a look at his team right here, now, of course, this is a 12-team Dynasty best ball. It also is Superflex and includes some IDPs. Now, Dynasty Daddy does not have the values for IDPs in here, which is fine. IDPs are tough to judge. There's not many sites out there or resources with values for Dynasty players. So a lot of I'm in a couple of Dynasty IDP leagues, and I'm just kind of taking it as it goes with the IDP players. But use your best judgment with IDP players. I mean, obviously, somebody like Micah Parsons is going to be around for a while and is a stud. So, I mean, if you really, really want him on your team, go ahead and offer what you want. But for me, I'm just taking it as a learning experience with these IDP leagues, as this one is. And so, we're not going to focus on the IDP players so much here. We're just going to focus on the offensive guys and see some actionable things that Blake could do with this roster. So, when I'm looking at best ball leagues, the first thing I want to do is avoid as many zeros on my roster on a weekly basis as possible. So, when we start off with Dynasty Superflex teams, we want to look at the quarterback position to begin with. Wide receiver would be next. And so we'll start with the quarterback position. And so we take those things into consideration, the uh, trying to avoid zeros, and we want to have maybe only this one's a 30-man roster. Now, remember, some of these players that are not listed would be the IDPs, but with 30 men on your roster, really want to keep it to maybe just a couple of zeros on a weekly basis. And so when I start at quarterback, I look here, and what jumps out to me is Michael Penix and Trey Lance, especially Michael Penix here. You've got 3,700 in value sitting. What's going to be, and it's going to be sitting on his bench for as long as Kirk Cousins is playing there down in Atlanta. So that's a lot of value stuck into a zero on a weekly basis. Unless that Achilles injury has something that I don't know. As far as I know, Kirk Cousins is going to be ready for week one. And so what we're looking at is a huge zero out of almost 4,000 points here with Michael Penix. So what I try to be doing with him is moving Penix for a third quarterback that can actually score him points starting week one, right? So, you could look at somebody like I mean, he's got Hurts and Tua, which is totally fine, right? But there's going to be weeks where Tua has an off week. Hurts pretty much would be in his lineup just about every game with the rushing upside that he carries. So with Tua, you never know what you're going to get. Some games he's going to be a stud, others not so much. And so you definitely want a third option, all right? Now, obviously, there's bye weeks, but I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking on a week-to-week basis. You still want that third option. And so, what I would be doing is looking at the other teams in the league and, first of all, looking at which teams have possibly more than 3 starting quarterbacks, because those teams are the ones that would be most willing to give up a quarterback. Somebody that has 2 quarterbacks only obviously is not gonna give up 1, but somebody who has 3 is probably, looking at it from the same eyeballs that we're trying to look at it here, and you wanna have that 3rd quarterback. So somebody that has 3 is gonna be a little more difficult to deal with. But somebody that has 4 or even 5 quarterbacks that are starters, those would be the teams to start with, and those teams would include in this league, we have Conklin Ass, which happens to be my team, and then there's Ram's team sucks, and I am Hockey. Now, in particular, I want to look at I am Hockey. He happens to have 4 quarterbacks on his roster that start, as well as Kirk Cousins, ironically. Now, one of those quarterbacks he has is Bo Nick, who just happens to go right around the same area that Michael Penix does in startups and is similarly valued right now. Now, obviously, Bo Nix is more likely to start this season. However, when you take into consideration that I am Havdi does roster both Kirk Cousins as well as Drake London, you could see the correlation there. You know what I'm saying? So I would simply try for a straight up deal here with Penix for Knicks. Try that straight up to begin with, and that would get you your third quarterback right out of the gate. Not only that, but you have Cortland Sutton in your wide receiver room that gives you a stack right away. I see benefits for this deal to both sides. I am Hobby. Yes, he'd be losing one starting quarterback, but he has 4 right now, and so to sort of insulate that Kirk Cousins value, you would then grab a hold of the entire Atlanta quarterback room. And so if any issues flare up with Cousins' Achilles this season, um, or whatever problems could happen to Cousins with injuries, then you'd have Penix there. And so I could see that working out for I am Havdi as well. So that'd be one thing, one place I would start right there. Then Trey Lance, in a lineup league, especially if you got Dak, I don't mind rostering Trey Lance, but um, and in lineup leagues in general, I don't mind basically as many backup quarterbacks as you can fit onto your roster. Um, but in a best ball league, you want quarterbacks rostered that are playing. Okay. Trey Lance, yes, he does possess upside if given the opportunity in Dallas, but unless Dak goes down with injury, he's sitting on the bench the whole season. I mean, on top of that, we don't even know if he actually is going to be the quarterback too. I mean, Cooper Rush is still there, and Cooper Rush knows the system, been there for a few years. I don't know that necessarily Mike McCarthy's just gonna turn the keys over to Trey Lance in a pinch, right? If Cooper Rush subs in for an injured Dak for a particular game, and then maybe Dak's just going to be out for 1 week. I could easily see Cooper Rush just getting the call. Now, if it was for an extended injury, say 4 to 6 weeks or more, then I could see Trey Lance coming into play. But that's where that's where I look at from a Trey Lance perspective. All right. Yes, he does possess great upside. If Dak were to go down for the whole season and then Trey Lance blows up, firing away at CD, um, then we could see some huge value increase. But that is, on a perspective of 1 to 100. I mean, the odds of that happening are so small. Um, and so in best ball, he is not a roster spot I want to be using. And so unless I have Dak, maybe as the last spot on my roster. All right. So Trey Lance is somebody I would shop around, especially try starting with the Dak owner, and then trade him away for a draft pick, and then pick up somebody on waivers who isn't going to get a zero on any given week. And what I mean is pick up a wide receiver that's a fourth wide receiver on some team, and when they do score a touchdown, they're probably going to get into the lineup for you. So that'd be my next move to look at trying. Um, so then we'll move over to the that's all I got on the quarterbacks. Now we'll move over to the wide receivers here. And with the wide receivers, he's looking at Puka Nakua, Jalen Waddle, excuse me, Jalen Waddle, who he just recently acquire from the Good Neighbors. Excuse me. He did have to give up Tank Dell and a 26 second to go ahead and do that. So Jalen Waddle for Tank Dell and a 26 second. Uh, love the deal from the Good Neighbors perspective. I don't mind this deal at all for Blake here. He acquired Jalen Waddle, who is a great stack with Tua. Any weeks that Tyreek might be out with injury, you can see a huge explosion from Jalen Waddle. So if Tyreek gets some kind of hamstring injury or something and he's out 3 to 4 weeks, you could see an explosion for a month from Jalen Waddle. Even with Tyreek in the room, Waddle's still guaranteed a good 75, 80 catches for 1,000+ yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns this season. So I'm not buying into Tyreek having next season as his last season. And so I do see Tyreek continuing to play even after next season. But that's another story in and of itself. So moving along after Jalen Waddle, he's got Hollywood, Cortland Sutton, as I mentioned before, Jacoby Myers, then Javon Baker, Tez Walker, Adam Thielen, Zay Jones, and Anais Smith. Now, all in all, for best ball, this is a pretty solid wide receiver room, in my opinion. I mean, you've got uh, pretty much every week starters, if you look at it from a lineup league perspective, in weekly starters in Puka, Waddle, Hollywood, Cortland Sutton, and Jacoby Myers. He's got 5 solid wide receivers there. Then, and this is a start 12, so it's start 12 best ball. So there's the ability to fit in up to 6 wide receivers on a weekly basis. So you're looking at those 5 pretty much weekly. Then after that, he's got 2 nice rookies in Baker and Tez Walker. But behind that, I really like the Adam Thielen and Zay Jones combo. Those two, especially early on, you could see them produce. Adam Thielen, as we know, blew up at the beginning of last season. Now with Deontay Johnson in the room there in Carolina, probably see Thielen's targets, slide down a little bit, but he still is a productive veteran. And the same goes for Zay Jones. I mean, he's in this Cardinals wide receiver room that pretty much just has the big big addition of Marvin Harrison. Obviously, he'll get tons of the targets from Kyler. But after that, I mean, you're just looking at him competing with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. I mean, yeah, I love Greg Dortch for what you can squeeze out of him. But Zay Jones has been a solid contributor, both in Jacksonville and before that with the Raiders. And so I just can see this. I can see the same thing happening in Arizona where Zay Jones ends up stealing the number 2 spot, even if he doesn't do that and move ahead of Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch. Zay Jones will be that solid veteran presence in the huddle. And so he will earn his targets. He's one of the hardest working receivers in the league. And so I definitely see Zay Jones as possibly scooping in a lot here and there, maybe 3, 4 times a season for him. And then on the bottom, I'm fine with Anaya Smith. He's got Jalen Hurts, so I don't mind the dark throw for the rookie there. I mean, the third wide receiver spot is completely wide open there for the Eagles. Um, so I don't see many moves you really have to make here. I mean, one you could try is going to the AJ Brown owner and even just trying a straight up swap with Puka. I think that if I had to bet on it today, I would think AJ Brown outscores Puka. Within the next 2 to 3 seasons, they'll be very close. I think that AJ Brown's more of a guarantee for the next 2 to 3 seasons. And as far as dynasty goes, I don't know that I want to look at it for more than that. I mean, a 2 to 3 year window is really all we want to do. And is Puka's rookie season actually, you know, can he actually produce that again? Um, who says Cooper Cup's going to be injured as much as he was last season? When he was back in the lineup, it definitely dropped down Puka's targets. And so I give Puka all the credit in the world for what he accomplished last season. But honestly, in a startup, I'm leaning towards AJ Brown. They're both valued almost identical. I think AJ Brown's at 67 or 6,800. So you could basically just do a straight up swap if you wanted to with those. Um, but we'll see with some of the other positions. There might be another avenue to try and get AJ Brown. Um, I'm not I'm not all into doing a 3 for 1 or 2 for 1 or 4 for 2 in best ball format, because generally you want more players that actually can score on a weekly basis in return rather than the one big item, especially when you're starting 12 on a weekly basis. But when it comes down to a stud like AJ Brown, I possibly wouldn't mind doing that. Now, I don't want to leave you don't want to leave yourself too thin on the back end when you're talking that way either. So if we look over at the running back positions to see if there's somebody you could maybe dangle out there to help acquire AJ Brown, um, his running back room right now looks like Devon Achane and Alvin Kamara up at the top. He's also got Blake Corum, which I really like. And then after that, it's sort of a mishmash with Tyler Algier, Alexander Madison, Kenneth Gainwell, and Jamal Williams, all handcuff types or running back 3 types on their respective teams. So the problem with like Kenny Gainwell and Jamal Williams is you might be seeing some zeros early on in the season. Now, Jamal Williams, it all depends on how much action the Saints actually do give to Kendre Miller right out of the gate. Um, and then, of course, if Kamara gets hurt, then you have Jamal Williams. I don't think they're going to turn just all the reins over to Kendre Miller. So Jamal Williams is a nice cheap option there right at the bottom of his roster. Don't mind him sitting there at all. Alexander Madison, I mean, yeah, he was a golden handcuff behind Dalvin Cook for all those years, and now he's slid over to the Raiders. And I just don't know how much work he's going to get. I mean, I like Zamir White this going into this season. I'm not diving headfirst into buying a bunch of Zamir White, but I definitely think he's the better back than Alexander Madison. Um, but again, as your whatever fifth, sixth running back, I mean, I don't mind it for now. So all in all, I don't mind the running back room of Devon Achane and Alvin Kamara, especially with when you've got a nice, decent wide receiver room there. But again, going back to AJ Brown, when you have a lineup like this, where you're looking at the spike weeks, trying to get the spike weeks from Devon Achane, and then the nice floor from Kamara, that's a solid running back room. But the wide receivers, he's got to get some extra pizzazz there, and he could do that by having Hurts AJ Brown stack as well as the Tua Waddle stack. So that would be something that I would go out and maybe try to jump on. Now, if we go to the tight end room's pretty solid with Mark Andrews, of course. Then after that, he's got Chig and Jared Wiley, the rookie for the Chiefs. So Jared Wiley kind of concerns me there. He's probably going to be a big zero for most of the weeks, but in all honesty, I mean, I don't really mind it. I mean, a Kelsey injury, he's a Kelsey injury away from uh, good potential snap share percentage. I don't expect much though in his rookie season, so maybe scour the waivers for you know for another tight end that actually is going to be playing and getting weekly snaps. All right, but after that, we look at the draft picks there, and all he's traded away so far in the future is that 26 second, which I don't mind again, to get that stack with Waddle and Tua. It's not that big of a draft pick. I mean, that's 2 years away. He can easily get that back if he really wants to. But again, it's 2 years away. Who knows what that's going to actually entail? And so when we look with this Dynasty Daddy website, it shows that Blake is right in the middle of the pack here. He's a frisky team. They label your team as either a contender, frisky, or they say trust the process. There is also an option. You could be a super team, but to be a super team, you basically have to have ones all the way across the board. Like you have to have the top starter rank and the top draft rank, and be extremely high across the board in all positions to be a super team. And I've only think I've seen. I'm in 19 leagues, and I think I've only seen a super team 2 or 3 times. Um, but anyway, back to Dan Flashes here. And he's a frisky team in the middle of the pack, which I don't mind. I mean, the startup just happened, so we haven't even gotten into the season yet. Things could happen here. Uh, Blake Corum could take over for Kyron Williams there with the Rams. Bijan Robinson could get injured and Tyler Algier blows up. And then he's got 2 nice rookies here in Javon Baker and Tez Walker at wide receiver. So it's a nice mix. The problem comes in when you're trying to trade with a team like this. As you can see, his positional ranks: fifth at quarterback, eighth at running back, seventh at wideout, seventh at tight end, and 10th at draft rank. He's not, he doesn't really have a position of strength to trade from. Quarterbacks is his most valuable position. And again, we mentioned the Michael Penix deal that he could try with Bo Nix. I think that would be his first and foremost action to try and take, and that could improve his performance on a weekly basis tremendously. Now, there's another option here on Dynasty Daddy. Let me go bring that up here. If we go over to the left, I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible. All right. Never mind. It basically, when you're on Dynasty Daddy, there's a ton of options here over on the left, and one of them is an option to see what the playoff percentage is. And now I checked that out earlier. It gives a projection for your seasonal record, and then your playoff chances, your first round bye chances, and your chances to win it all. And for Blake, he's sitting in somewhat in the middle. His projection right now is to go 6-8. Chances of making the playoffs we're at 31%. Chances for the first round bye were 3%, and to win it all was at 3%. So he's definitely not at the bottom, and he's just sitting in the middle right here. So what I think we need to see from Blake is a little bit of action there at quarterback, and we could see some good things from this squad this year. So that's the first roster review I've given. Please leave any comments you have in the chat, maybe some of your own possibilities for Blake. As always, I mean, in a best ball format, you could try and hook up any of those receivers with a quarterback to help stack another team and maybe stack some of your own guys. I'm just talking in general, not just for Blake's team, but your teams in best ball as well. And so, if any of you out there would like a roster review, just sign up to our Patreon, the Birdhouse Dynasty Show. Join us for $1 a month to the chat rooms right now. Do that, and I will give you a free roster review of the team of your choice. Just let me know what your username is on Sleeper and which league in particular you want me to look at, and I'll give you the best advice I possibly can. I mean, hell, uh, Blake is in my league literally, and I'm trying to help the guy out. So hey, I just want Dynasty to be fun for everyone, and because that's I enjoy leagues that are competitive. I don't want to be in a league where only three guys are active. That's no fun at all. I don't care if I win a league like that. So anyway, again, please join our Patreon, Birdhouse Dynasty Show. Sign up today and get your free roster review. It's just $1 a month for the chat forums. We want to get that chat forum rolling as we near the NFL season. It is literally just 12 days away from starting. That's right. The Hall of Fame game will be next Thursday. We've got the Houston Texans and Bears going at it. The Houston Texans getting their first player inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, Andre Johnson, monster for years down there in Houston, well deserved, just a great career. He was a guy who didn't have any trouble off the field, just a stand up professional all around. Andre Johnson, well deserving of that induction into the Hall of Fame. Also for the Bears, we have Steve McMichael, defensive tackle on that great 85 Bears defense. Also well deserved. Steve McMichael dealing with ALS. It's just a great honor and great to see the NFL get him into the Hall of Fame. That is going to be special for us all to see. So you can check me out on Twitter, ask questions on there. It's clemke007 underscore FF. And that's all I've got for you tonight. Never stop working.